Hey everyone, Andrew here, and it's time for the top 5 best films of 2023. This list was a lot easier to come up with than some previous years. Like last year, I had a really hard time with it because I had 2 films that I counted as 5 out of 5s, and everything else was just like, it's really good, but it has certain things that keep it from being near perfect for me. This year was a lot easier. Like, I had 6 films that I gave 5 out of 5, and I'm telling you right now, all 6 are in my top 5. I'm sorry, I had to. I couldn't deny these films being on the list. With that said, let's get into it. This is my top 5 best films of 2023. Tied at number 5, Elemental and Nimona. Both were really good, really creative, interesting, well done animated films that I truly loved. And honestly, both of these had a position at 4 and 5, but a certain film I watched in the last week pushed its way into my top 5, and I couldn't deny its presence there. But I also wanted to give true love to these films because they were 2 of my favorite films from the entire year. I truly loved watching both of them. They are both really great animated films that have one thing holding them back. Like, they are like so close to perfect, and they're just let down by certain little things. We have Elemental, which is this really good creative romance story about, child of immigrants from Fire Nation, and they're all made out of fire, and she's been living in this city with all these different elements, and she ends up befriending this boy that's made out of water, and they start dating and fall in love and trying to figure out how to make that relationship work, and can they make that relationship, but she also doesn't want to, let down her father, who sacrificed so much for her.
This shop is dream of our family. Someday it'll all be yours.
It's this really great, second generation immigrant love story. And it's being held back by the fact that the story is predictable. It's very much what you expect when I say second generation immigrant love story. Like, it's what you expect. It's the, hey mom and dad, I brought home a black boyfriend type of thing.
Sorry, buddy. Elements don't mix.
Hey!
Plus, my dad would boil you alive.
Why does anyone get to tell you what you can do in your life?
It's very much a little bit of that. But I would argue that because this is a Pixar film, because of the animation, because of the way it's drawn, because of the way it's told, this is that archetype, that story, told to the utmost highest level. Like, just perfection in the animation and in the storytelling and the characters. Like, you really get to know these characters and understand them and love them, and you can feel the love between each of them. I've heard some people saying it's like the boy in this isn't as good as the girl actress in this, and you don't really feel the love as much from his side, and I'm like, yes, if you are only really listening to the voice. But if you watch the animation, you watch the way he watches her, the way he is fascinated and obsessed and loves every single little thing that she does. Watching her do anything makes him glow. Like, it makes him light up, and he loves seeing her be herself. And it's so heartwarming and so fun and so nice to have in a story. And there's just so many little interesting creative things about the world that they're in. I love the fact that she gets brighter and darker as, she gets excited or has feelings or things like that, and her flame will change color. And one of the things that I just saw that was like, I didn't even really notice when I was watching, his hair is in a constant wave, and it's an actual crescent ocean wave that is constantly moving and constantly shifting, and it's just so amazing, and you can really see how much work and dedication was put into it. I also highly recommend watching the documentary that goes with it, where the writer-director talks about it and his connection to it. It adds a lot of stuff to the story. It's not a great documentary, but it does add stuff that makes a really great film even better. And it's just also this really heartwarming story about, trying to live up to what your parents did for you, what they expect of you, trying to be, the good child. And
I've been trying to fill my father's shoes, but I never once asked what I wanted to do.
giving up so much of yourself to try and live up to that goal. It's just this beautiful, amazing story that sadly didn't do well in theaters. I'm so glad that it found an audience on Disney Plus and became popular that way. It does make me worried, though. I'm worried that because of Lightyear's flop and Elemental's flop in theaters, that they're not going to let Pixar do more, big theater films anymore. And it's like, no, these are still the best filmmakers out there. Like, I will take Elemental over Wish any day of the week. Like, it is legitimately, for me, among some of the best Pixar. It is not their best. Like, it's not gonna beat my top 5, but it's in my top 10 for them. Like, I put it up there alongside with, like, I put it up there with Coco and Up and Cars 3, where it's like, it's really great in moments, but it has little things that keep it from being perfection for me. And then we have Nimona, which is this really fun action adventure story about this commoner who became a knight, and on his knighting ceremony, the queen is killed by his weapon, and he's accused of it and has to go on the run and prove his innocence.
Queen Killer is still out there.
Everyone is scared. He's a murderer.
He's a monster.
He's perfect.
And he is befriended by this shapeshifter named Nimona who wants to take down the establishment and cause chaos. And she thinks he's a big villain and she wants to be his sidekick.
Whatever your dark heart desires, boss, your sidekick has arrived.
I don't need a sidekick.
Every villain needs a sidekick.
And she is the best thing. Like, she is so much fun.
The name's Nimona.
And how did you...
Whoa, yeah! Sick arm! Did it bleed a lot?
What?
Did they let you keep the old one?
No.
Just this little chaotic ball of energy, and I love every second of it. The film, sadly, is let down by its animation style. Like, it's not necessarily the characters or the way they're drawn, but it's the way they choose to draw the world around them. Like, a lot of it feels very unfinished, or like just it could use a more polish or more thought put into it, or just more details. Like, it feels like it's slightly unrendered, but again, these are like minor problems. Like, these are things that I can totally see people having a problem with. For me, in both of these films, everything else about the film is so great that I can ignore this little thing for the most part. I just truly loved watching it. The action scenes are great, the characters are great, the storytelling is really cool. I love the shape-shifting. I love everything about Nimona. She's so interesting and so creative.
Big stuff. Excuse me. I've got to get him out of here quietly.
On it!
Wait, not like that. Not like that either.
You want me to shift? You don't want me to shift? Pick a lane!
And now you're a boy.
I am today.
Wait, no!
But at the heart of it and the real of it, it's a story of acceptance, it's a story of love, it's a story of friendship and getting to know someone and truly learning how good someone can be, and has these great, heartwarming moments.
Because once everyone sees you as a villain, it's not my kid! That's what you are.
Do you think he saw us?
Yes.
And it was just a really fun little adventure story that I just absolutely fell in love with. Now, if I had to place them, this one, Nimona was going to be my number 5, and Elemental was going to be my number 4. However, Elemental got both pushed down due to one film. Oppenheimer. I'm surprised this made my top 5. Not because it's a bad film in any way, shape, or form, but because it's a film style and a type of film that I don't particularly tend to like. I'm not very big into the big, dramatic dramas that are intended to win Oscars. So when I chose to watch Oppenheimer, I did not watch it in theaters. I skipped it because no one was really convincing me that it was something I had to see in theaters. And when I did decide to watch it, I watched it passively the first time. I just had it playing while I did other things. And I was blown away with it even then. and it would have been definitely in my honorable mentions, but I was so blown away with it, and I had followed it and was so easy to be involved in it just passively that I knew I had to sit down and actually physically watch it and give it real attention. So in less than a week I watched it twice, and after the second one I knew I could not keep it out of my top 5. Like, this film is just so good. Like, it is so interesting and so well told and so unique in its approach to it. It's a film that should have been dry and boring and not that interesting. Like, there are so many biopics that are just like, oh, great, they're just talking in rooms and this and that and the other. And that's kind of what this is, but it's presented like a Hollywood blockbuster. Like, it felt like watching a Speed or a something that was more action oriented. Like, it had that element for me, which is weird, but it was because of the execution, because of what Christopher Nolan did with the script and the way it was shot and the way they told it. It just made it very compelling. And the fact that the story is so easy to understand and so easy to follow and so easy to be a part of is amazing, because it's told out of sequence. Like, it's so, like, because you have 3 separate timelines that are going on. You have the trial for Robert Downey Jr.'s character, you have the trial of Oppenheimer's character, and then you have him telling his story about everything that led into the atomic bomb. And if you're not paying attention, you should have a hard time following this. But honestly, even on that first watch through, I understood what was happening the entire time. Like, it was really easy to follow. It was really easy to keep along. It was a film that did not feel its length. It felt like it went by in a nice blur. It was so interesting, and it was such a great character study and way to dive into this complicated and interesting person during this really complicated and interesting time. Cillian Murphy just disappears into Oppenheimer and gives this outstanding performance of this character.
They won't fear it until they understand it, and they won't understand it until they've used it.
This performance is just stellar. And then you just have all the great side characters and all the great things. You had, like, I know Robert Downey Jr. got at least a Golden Globe nomination for his performance in this, and he's pretty good in it. I liked him a lot.
You can't give Oppenheimer a platform. You can't martyr him. This is just how the game is played.
But honestly, I gotta call out Matt Damon in this. Matt Damon was stellar as the general trying to keep these scientists in line.
It's the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world.
And it's just like, they took a story that was already kind of interesting, and then they just told it in such a creative and interesting way. And I love the fact that it is primarily historically accurate. There's not too many things that they alter to make it more cinematic. Because we've seen so many of these biopics and these stories where they just alter large chunks of the story to fit whatever narrative they want to tell. Bohemian Rhapsody, anybody. They just made up characters and stories and stuff that never happened. But with Oppenheimer, it's like 99% accurate. There's literally like 3 scenes in the entire film that could be, that I heard and saw that could be on the iffy side. Like, there's a scene early on where he poisons one of his teacher's apple because the teacher yelled at him and embarrassed him and wouldn't let him go to this thing that he really wanted to do. And that's one of those things where it's like, it's in his biography, but whether or not that happened is unknown. It does. When I saw that and I watched that and I realized what that was, I'm like, that's a really dark thing for this person to do just because this teacher was rude to him, that he literally poisoned an apple to kill him. But it also kind of tied into the flaws of Oppenheimer in that he comes off as a very stoic, very by the numbers, very scientifically brained person. But when he has emotional reactions and feelings, he has a tendency to dive into them and give into darker and more dangerous thoughts. And so like keeping that scene in makes sense in that regard. Also, basically, any of the scenes with Oppenheimer and Einstein together are completely made up for the film. Like, they were friends, they talked to each other, but them talking about these specific events at these specific times is not known. It's like they may have had conversations about this, but it is unlikely. It was mostly made up for the film. But honestly, for a blockbuster that did this well and did this much stuff and was this engaging with its audience, to be that historically accurate is just outstanding. Like, I think only really Christopher Nolan can get with doing a film like this, that's this true to the source and true to the history, while also being so entertaining and so well told. It's a film that fundamentally should not work for me. And I say that, again, as someone who doesn't like the films that tend to win Best Picture. Also tend to be films like that I just go, ugh. And Oppenheimer, even with that passive viewing, I really liked it the first time. And then after watching it the second time, I realized that I loved it. I see it on a lot of people's number ones, and it deserves that spot. And I'm so glad it did well. I hope that it wasn't just because they paired it with the Barbie film that it did well. Like, I truly believe this is a film that deserves to have stood on its own and been successful on its own. But, I mean, it worked out for both sides, so I'm like, it's a good thing that it worked for both of them. My one thing that kept it out of the top 3 is that it is not a film I see myself going back to very often. Like, I could see watching it maybe once or twice a year, but if I had to watch it, like if I tried to do an immersion tank thing where I watched it every day for a month or something like that, I would not want to do it. Like, I would get sick of the film very eventually. Whereas with the top 3, I don't think I would get sick of them at all. Moving on to my top 3 films. So these ones were all interchangeable. I kept flip-flopping on where they were and who was in front and who was in third. Like, they're all, like, stacked on top of each other, like, this close. Like, they're so... But I had to really phone in and pick up and choose which ones had the best parts and which one had the most little flaws. So, number 3 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, we went into this with big hope. Like, you know, we got James Gunn back as a director. We had all of the original cast coming back. This was definitely going to be the last hurrah for most of these characters, if not all of these characters. Like, we knew Drax wasn't going to come back for another one. Gamora said she wasn't going to come back for another one. And you spend the whole movie waiting for them to fall, waiting for them to not make it. And that we got the ending that we did is just so heartwarming. And we were all hoping that this would end on a good note. And I honestly feel that it ended on one of the best notes of the entire MCU. This is a film that I know can be a little bit hard of a watch for some people because it does have elements of animal cruelty in there and animals being tortured, and that is rough, and I understand that. That's the point. This is supposed to be a hard-to-watch, kind of rough film, especially those scenes. You are getting into the back history and the story of how Rocket became Rocket, and that is only going to lead through pain and misery and torture. For what it's telling, it tells that perfectly. Like, you understand everything about Rocket at that point. You know that character inside and out by the end of this film. And to see where he started and where he ends this story on is just, it is so well done and so well told and so creative. And then to have all of these characters back and have them all have character moments and these arcs and these things that they learn and grow and change and are better people. I was a little worried to have the new Gamora show up, but she works really well and is a nice little bit of a change where she's not our Gamora anymore, but she's still Gamora and she still has her moments.
And she came back. Came back a total dick.
Oh, please.
And Nebula worked really well with the team. I'm like, honestly, I wish we got more films with her as part of the team.
Push down on it.
What?
Push it down.
I am pushing down on it.
Push the button.
Now what?
Open the door.
That is a stupid design. And your instructions were very unclear.
They had a really, truly loathable villain that you just wanted to see suffer.
It inspired me to create Counter-Earth.
I don't care.
All of the good and none of the bad.
Rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.
Such great effects, great storytelling, well told, well executed. Just some of the best score, some of the best music, some of the best needle drops. Just so interesting and so creative. It does, however, have a couple little things. Primarily, it has some choices where you're just like, why did you do that? Like, okay. The one scene that really pops in my mind is there's, towards the end of the film, with the villain's base is being destroyed and is on the verge of blowing up, and they're trying to get all the creatures and all the animals out of there. And Rocket goes and rescues all the raccoons, and him accepting that all that stuff is great. But then they get to the raccoons escaping into the other ship, and what they end up doing is they jump on this woman and start scratching at her skin and crawling over her desperately to get out. And I'm just like, why? Why did you let this woman get mauled for this scene? There was no reason for it. That was not needed in any way. Like, you could have just had the raccoons get to the ship safely. It's just little things like that where it's like, that is bad in that moment, but it's a 2-second scene and it's gone, and you're just like, oh, okay. But the rest of the film is just so well told and well executed that I just can't hate on it for weird things like that, because it's just near perfection. Like, it is just such a great way to end these characters' arcs, to end this story, to end this version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. This group of characters that no one had any faith in. None of us knew or cared about Rocket Raccoon or Groot or any of these characters before, and now they are as big a names as any superhero that exists, and that is just amazing. But yes, to see these characters and have them on this adventure and to be together and to have this story and this arc is just so heartwarming, and it feels like the perfect ending for this version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I hope we get to see some of them back in some way, shape, or form, but I understand that some of them are not coming back, and that's okay. I'm happy to have had Gamora for the time that we've had her. I'm happy to have Drax for the time that we had him. They are amazing characters, and maybe we can redo them and try them in another way at a later time. But this version of this Guardians ended on the perfect note, and it was just such a blast to go on this adventure with them.
He left out some important information, but that is the gist of it.
The Super Mario Brothers movie. I think we all went in this one with a little trepidation. Like, the second we heard Chris Pratt is going to be playing Mario, we were all like, really? Chris Pratt, really? Like, he doesn't seem to fit the character at all. He doesn't seem like he's going to do a good job. And I was wary of the story and what they would choose to do with it. Like, when we first started seeing the trailers, I'm like, well, the animation looks good, but I feel like something's going to be off in this. And then I was so happy that this was not just good, this was great to amazing to perfection. Like, this is legitimately, to me, the best video game adaptation ever. It's just so into the world and into the environments and living up to everything that we expected of the Mushroom Kingdom and of all these characters and all these things, and they just excelled in presenting and showing that off. Like, just amazing story, creative, interesting, good performances, great worlds, great ideas. Like, when they were showing the trailers, they kept showing, like, the go-karts and the Rainbow Road, and I thought that was just going to be, like, a sneak preview for the film, next film. Like, I expected that during the end credits, but to have that not only be an actual scene in the film, but to be a really well done and well made and well choreographed scene was, and I was, like I said, I was hesitant because there was also the people that were making this. Like, this was made by Illumination, which has a little bit of a spotty record when it comes to their films. And this is easily the best film they've done. Like, it's this and the Sing films are their best ones, and then Despicable Me 2. And then a little below that is Despicable Me 1. But then, like, because they can make some garbage out there. And I'm happy to see that they didn't do any of that really in this. The only thing that feels like Illumination in this entire film is that every once in a while they have needle drops of songs that are unnecessary and don't really fit the scene or what's going on. Like when Mario and Peach go to the Kong Kingdom and they are escorted and driven around Kong Village, it just starts playing Take On Me by Aha. And it's like, this doesn't really fit the scene. Why this song? And it's really weird because, like, the entire rest of the film, they used, like, really good scores. Like, they took actual music from the games and worked them into the score and made them work and made them think. Like, just, it was so great to hear so much of the games in this film, and to see so much of the games in this film, and to see all the little references and all the little things they had in it. Like, they had a video game in there that was Jumpman, which was Mario's original name in the original Donkey Kong games, and just so many things that worked so well in this. The performances were also really good. Like, Chris Pratt, who we were all really wary of, was pretty good as Mario. Like, not amazing. He definitely did not try to do the, it's a me, let's a go voice too much. But he did it. He incorporated it into small parts and made it work for it and made it interesting and gave it his own twist and his own personality while staying true to the character and true to who Mario is.
Oh, I got this. No problem.
You had Anna Taylor-Joy, who was a really good Princess Peach and gave her some really good personality and really fun to watch.
We are going to stop that monster.
Like, I even liked Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, and I can't stand Seth Rogen, so, like, that says something.
Meow. Ah! You got the cat box! Oh, I'm sorry. Now you die.
And then we had Charlie Day as Luigi, who just was perfect as Luigi. Like, the only negative was we didn't get enough of him.
Do you think I know every human being with a mustache wearing an identical outfit with a hat with the letter of his first name on it? Because I don't.
Like, I'm hoping he gets to be a huge part of the second one. I hope they don't get separated again. Or give him his own and let's do a Luigi's Mansion. I would be down for that. That could be so much fun. But then you had Jack Black as Bowser, and oh my god, he was perfection.
Not sure if you know who I am, but I'm about to rule the world.
Just this perfect level of menace and danger in his voice. But then he could also tap into that softer side and what really moves Bowser. Because at Bowser's heart, he is a guy who wants to be loved and wants the person he wants to love them back, but always wants to take the easy route to get it. And does not accept no as an answer. Him and Peach's relationship is just so perfect in this, and I loved seeing any time that Bowser was thinking about Peach or talking about Peach, and he just softened up, and you could see it, and it worked so well. And my god, when he sang a song about her, like, Peach's is legitimately a bop. It is great. I'm sorry, Peach's is the best song of the year. Like I said, the only little nitpick is those little needle drops that are unnecessary. But otherwise, this is easily the best thing Illumination has done. It makes me so excited and so happy, and I so badly want to see more in this universe. I would love to see them do more Mario. I honestly want them to do Link soon. Like, and I say this as someone who loves the original Super Mario Brothers movies. Like, I love that film. It's not a good adaptation, but it is a fun film. This is legitimately one of the best adaptations of any video game ever done. And if any of the spin-offs and sequels from this are half as good as this, they will be better than 90% of all the other video game movies. Because, my god, that is an incredibly low bar to get over. But some of them just cannot seem to do it.
The double, we're faster than the others, you'll be hooked on the brothers.
Now let's move on to some honorable mentions. This was the year of the weird biopics, where they focused more on products than they focused on people, which was kind of interesting and kind of fun. Like, they were all really good, honestly. We had The Beanie Bubble, which was about the rise and fall of the Beanie Baby, which had Zach Galifianakis in it as the guy that helped co-found it. He did really good in that. Like, his performance in it is stellar. He really disappears into the part. You had Tetris, which was about getting the game Tetris out of Russia, as it was developed by a Russian office worker who just figured it out how to do it one day because he was bored, and how it became this big global phenomenon, how much trouble and effort it took to get that out into the world. You had Air, the creation of the Air Jordans, and how that came to be, and that is just a really stellar performance and a stellar cast and stellar story. They managed to make it extremely interesting and engaging, despite the fact that, it's about shoe. There was the Blackberry film, which, when I started it, honestly, it felt like a spoof. Like, all of the characters were a bit way too over the top, and with the way it was shot, where it was shot kind of like they were filming an episode of The Office, it's like, it came off a little odd, but it was such an interesting story, and so odd, it was such odd characters, that it strangely became compelling. It made it hard to like it because it didn't feel like it was based off real things, but it was still really fun and really interesting. But my personal favorite of those was this film called Flaming Hot, which was about the guy who invented the Flaming Hot Cheetos. Now, that one, from the title and from what the poster, looked like a spoof. Like, it looked like they were making fun of this style of film, which this wasn't really a style of films before this year, so I don't know why I assume everyone is spoofing it for some reason. But it actually turned out to be a really interesting, really engaging story. It's about this guy who used to be a gangbanger and was trying to go straight and got a job working at the Frito-Lay's company as a janitor, and he just had this mind for machines and could really understand technology and wanted to learn and wanted to succeed and prove himself, and wanted to, had this idea of, like, we should market it to my community, to the Hispanic community, to these people that are looking for this flavor, for this feeling of home, and haven't been able to find it. And it was just so well told and so interesting. And it's kind of sad because it gets pushed under because Air and Blackberry was so interesting and so creative and so well done that a lot of people don't give this one a shot. And that's a shame, because this was actually really good and really well done. My personal favorite of those. We had Fast X, which legitimately was better than the last 3 Fast and the Furious films. Like, it's still not a masterpiece. It's still not as great as some of the older ones were. But it was definitely a better film than the last ones. Like, the story is better. The action is better. It makes more sense. It's not as over the top and ridiculous, although it can be. It does, unfortunately, keep bringing back characters who are supposed to be dead for no reason. The villain played by Jason Momoa in this is just stellar. He just gives this such a great, energetic performance, and it's just fun to watch him, and you just want to watch him win, which is great. And it actually made me excited for the next one. Like, way more than I was excited for the last 2. So there was Gran Turismo, which was about this kid that used to play Gran Turismo in his house, and then Turismo had a contest, and he went and competed and won and became a professional race car driver. Really well told, with really good action scenes and really good driving scenes. It was a lot of fun. One of the best things about the film, though, is that all of the stunt driving is done by the real person. Like, they got the actual guy to do all the stunt driving in the film, and that is so cool. There was The Pope's Exorcist, which was easily the best Exorcist film of the year, but it was fun. It had really good characters, and really good energy. Like, the beginning of it was a bit rough, but once it got towards the end, it was just so creative and so interesting. We had John Wick Chapter 4, near perfection, just a super great, amazing action film that was such a lovely step up from 3, because I really did not like 3. The violence got a little too much, like, just viciousness for the sake of viciousness type of thing. But like this one, it worked so well, and it was such a great cast and great storytelling. My one negative with it is a smidge on the long side, and there's stuff in it that I feel like could have been trimmed or cut. Like the staircase fall, where he just falls down this giant staircase twice, was a bit much. I really loved it though. The action scenes were great and everything, but it was a little on the longer side. He had Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, which was really good. Really did good homage and respect to the source material and the story that it was telling. But it had a really great cast and characters, and you really understood who they were and where they were coming from. And it felt like it belongs in the game's universe, like it belonged to it. And I'm not a huge Dungeons and Dragon person. Like, I've never played it, but I've always been interested in it, and I've always had a liking to it, and I've watched other people play it, and this feels true to the source material and what it's based off of. And even, like, for casuals like me, there was stuff that you could catch. Like, there's a scene in there where they go into this big tournament thing, and one of the other teams in the tournament is the original characters from the 1980s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which I have watched parts of. And I saw that and I'm like, oh, I know that! And it was nice to have even a reference that someone that's a casual like me could pick up on. Really lived up to what it needed to be. We had Transformers Rise of the Beasts, which was really good. Like, honestly, it was way better than any of the Michael Bay Transformers. I want to say it's even a little bit better than Bumblebee, but I think Bumblebee had better character moments. But the action scenes in this were really good. The new cast was really good. They did a good job of explaining why in the world the humans even needed to be there, instead of them just being dragged along like they were for some of the films. It was nice to see the Maximals in this. I wish we got to see more of them, or some of them had even, some form of dialogue, considering Cheetor and Rhinox basically got to say next to nothing the entire film. It was also weird that the Maximals never really transformed until the final fight. So Air Razor, who we got to see through a good chunk of the film, but gets sadly taken out partway through, we never got to see her maximized form, her full power form. But it was a really fun, really good. I hope we get more in this vein. I hope that this did well enough to do that. It doesn't sound like it did, but Bumblebee also didn't do well, and they managed to make this. So hopefully they keep making more, and they keep making it more like this and less mindless action like the Michael Bay ones. And then we have all of the superhero films, which apparently everybody else is sick of. I've heard nothing but non-stop comic book fatigue, superhero fatigue. I'm getting fatigue from people having superhero fatigue. Like, jeez Louise. And I get it. Like, honestly, even I've been getting it a little bit. But I have that more towards the TV shows. I had no problem going to see any of the movies. Like, the only one I skipped out on was Shazam 2, and that's because everyone told me to. But, like, I saw all of the other ones in theaters, and a lot of them I thought were pretty good. Blue Beetle was pretty good, had some really good action, some really good comedic moments, had a really good supporting cast. It was just let down by a boring lead and a boring villain. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was really good. It was a decent follow-up to, the first Aquaman. It did good use with those characters. It had some really fun, really good action scenes. And it was a much better note to end the DCEU on than, say, Shazam 2 or The Flash. Speaking of The Flash, I actually really like The Flash. It made number 3 on my DCEU best of list. If you want to hear more details on that, and Blue Beetle, and Aquaman, I recommend watching that because I go in bigger details. But I really liked The Flash. It had a lot of flaws to it, but it had some stuff that was just really creative and really interesting. The CGI and the bad effects was terrible. Not the worst effects I saw this year. But, I really liked the time travel and the way that they depicted it, and I like the scene of the different universes and getting to see versions of these characters that we never got to really see. Like, I thought it was a fun, interesting blast to watch. Like, I totally get that it has a lot of flaws and Ezra Miller is a monster, but I enjoyed the film enough that I can say that it was pretty good. I liked the Marvels. I thought that one was pretty good. I thought the action scenes were really good and had some really creative ideas. I think it was let down because the story wasn't as complete as it felt like it should have been. Like, it felt like there were large chunks of the middle that were just kind of missing, that would piece it together better. But it was nice to see these characters, and it was nice to see them have a little bit more personality. It was nice to see Kamala Khan on the big screen being a superhero. I hope we get to see more of her, because she was the best part of that film by far. And I love the little teaser to the X-Men universe at the end. Then you had Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Quantumania, and I don't get why everyone was hating on this one. Like, oh yeah, it's got really bad CGI effects. Again, baby cat. Also, it's the quantum realm. We had to do it through mostly CGI. Honestly, I thought it had some really creative and interesting ideas. I liked the guy that was basically had a laser for a head. I liked that the buildings were alive and could move. It had some really interesting things going on with it. I thought they did a really great job with Kang and introducing him and making him a real, legitimate, viable threat. I feel like they unfortunately shot themselves in the foot by going with the ending that they went with. Honestly, like, they should have gone with the original ending where Ant-Man lost and was stuck in the quantum realm and Kang escaped. Like, I get why they probably wanted to do that, because this might be one of the last times we see these characters, so they wanted to end on a slightly more positive note. But yeah, they could have done better by that. And everyone was hating on MODOK and is like, his look is terrible, he looks creepy, and I'm like, it's MODOK. What did you expect? It's a guy that has a head the size of a VW Bug. He was gonna always look weird and creepy. At least they made it kind of interesting and funny. I don't know, like, honestly, MODOK is one of those characters that you never expect to show up in a live-action film, and they did it, and it looked okay, and that's all I asked for, because MODOK is not a character that should have ever appeared in live-action. Honestly, I thought it was funny, and I thought it worked well, and it was nice to see that villain come back in some form. But, that's just me. For some of the made-for-TV films, there were some really good ones out there. My personal favorite, though, of the made-for-TV ones was one called Guiding Emily. It was the story of a woman who, during a rock climbing event, basically ends up slipping and falling, and she ends up going permanently blind. And her having to try to figure out how to deal with that and how to survive and get over that and figure out how to get back into the world and get back into her life worked really well. And during all this, at the same time, there's this dog who's being trained to be a guide dog, and he met Emily as a puppy, and now that he saw her again while she's blind, and he's like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to guide her. I'm supposed to be her guide dog. That's what I'm doing this for. And he, like, really gets into becoming the guide dog and training and becoming, worthy of being her dog. And it works so well, and it's just so sweet and so well told and so creative. The lead actress is really good. I love her in almost everything she's in. Highly recommend if you haven't seen it. It's one of the Hallmark ones that I'm like, this is actually could have been an actual film. Like, it's that level of quality. I can't count it, unfortunately, but if I could, I would throw in the Owl House as an honorable mention, because it's not technically a film, but this show ended just this year. Its final season was 3 hour-long episodes, so I could count that as one movie. But if you have not seen it, I do highly recommend it. It's this weird little kids show that is about, like, this girl who ends up in this magical, dangerous place and has to learn how to befriend people, and a darker, more twisted Harry Potter. But it's so heartfelt and so creative and so interesting and so well told, and each of these characters gets a lovely arc, and it's a beautiful story that, honestly, watch that first season, because that season is like perfection. So much good with it. And I just, these are all weird little fun characters I absolutely love, and I think you all might get a kick out of it. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So this is one of those rare sequels where it is not only as good as the original, it might actually be better. And I already had Across the Spider-Verse as a nearly perfect, absolute masterpiece film. Of all the superhero films that I've seen, of all the ones that I've done, it is in my top 10 all-timers. And now Across the Spider-Verse is as well. And I haven't put it above Into the Spider-Verse, but I could. There's one caveat about what's going to happen with this one that I will save to the end of the review. But my one nitpick with the Into the Spider-Verse was the art style choice. Now, it did really great characters, this, that, and the other, but the backgrounds could get a little bit iffy because of, and I figured out by watching this one, it's because they made this aesthetic choice to make it look more like a comic book. So it has this red and blue backgrounds, and that works sometimes, but sometimes it goes a little bit out of focus, and sometimes it looks like you need a pair of 3D glasses to be watching the scene. But it has so many little interesting parts, so many little things that work in this, and the second one just doubles down so hard on the art style. Like, my goodness, there is just so much going on. We go to Spider-Gwen's universe, and it's this lovely watercolor aesthetic, water paint kind of thing, where anytime someone has an emotional reaction, the universe responds to it, and it goes brighter, and if they have darker, sadder emotions, it goes darker and deeper in color. And then there's the first scene is her fighting against this anomaly that has popped up that's from this universe where all of the art is like Leonardo da Vinci drawings. So she's fighting this Leonardo da Vinci inspired vulture, and their art styles shouldn't be meshing well together, but they actually work so well in tandem, and all of the art styles work well with this, and it just flashes together so well. And there's just so many references, so many characters, so many little things that you can catch on, things that you would just be like, oh my god, what if they did this? And then they'll just pop up and this character will appear. And then adding in this idea that our Miles Morales, our Spider-Man for this, shouldn't exist. Like, his spider came from a different universe and was never meant to be in his universe, and he was the first anomaly. And it's like, what if his existing and becoming Spider-Man, what if that hadn't happened? Would the other Spider-Men still be alive? And would all of these situations be happening? Would the main villain of this one, the Spot, be popping up if, he hadn't become Spider-Man? And it asks some really deep questions and has some really good things where it's like, they had this idea that there are canon events, that there are these things that have to happen to a Spider-Man, otherwise the universe they're in will collapse.
You have a choice between saving one person and saving every world.
And Miles being like, I understand that, but I'm not gonna watch my dad die.
Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
And him, choosing to fight against not just all the Spider-Mans, but fight an entire universe, multiple universes of Spider-Man to try and save his dad just works so well and is so interesting and so creative. And just all of the characters that get in it. You have Spider-Man 2099 as this great villain with a good cause behind it. You got to see Spider-Punk, and he's freaking amazing. Like,
is when I'm not playing shows antagonizing fascists, a role model. I was briefly a runway model. I hate the AM, I hate the PM, I hate labels. I'm not a hero because calling yourself a hero makes you a self-pathologizing narcissistic autocrat. Come on.
I love so many of the characters in this franchise. I want them all to have spin-off films. I want a Spider-Man noir film. I want a Spider-Punk film. I will take even a, Spider-Ham film. I think we could do something to make an amazing film out of that. Such a high level of quality and storytelling, and every aspect of it works super well, that it makes me very worried with the next one. Because the only negative you can say at all about this film is that it's a part one of a two-part film. So you only get half of a story. And that is fine. That is okay. Because they told us ahead of time This was a part one. And the original, at the end of the original one, when they started even mentioning that they were going to do Spider ones, they called this one part one in those original things. They eventually dropped that, but we all at least had a hint that it was coming. But what happens if Spider-Man 3 is awful? What happens if that one is so bad that it tanks this film? Because that is literally the only thing that could lower my opinion of this one at all, is if the film that it goes into is not good. And I want to hope and I want to believe that the people behind this and the people making this will succeed. But history has shown that that is very rare, if not nearly impossible. Like, there have been so many directors, so many creative teams, so many groups that have tried to keep franchises going after they made such a high level last one, and more often than not, they don't succeed at the next one. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, Francis Ford Coppola's Godfather 3, them trying to continue the Terminator series without James Cameron. Hope the people behind this franchise are able to do that. I really hope so. I want the next one to be as good as this. If it's even just a little bit less, that's fine. Honestly, even if it's as good as, say, Spider-Man Far From Home, that will be a drop in the quality, but not enough that it would hurt this film. But I'm hopeful and optimistic, and I cannot wait for more of the Spider-Man film. But that's just my opinion. What do you all think? Do you like some of these films? Did you hate some of these films? Were there films in my honorable mentions that should have been in the top 5? Let me know in your comments below. Happy watching, happy reading. I will see you all next time. Bye!